All right, this is part two, some updates. This is a 2001 Kawasaki Prairie 400 4x4. In the last video I told you quite a bit about it, so I will paraphrase. Basically I bought this thing as a project. Pretty much the rear end was gone out of this thing. No good bearings whatsoever. I had the diff and the brake were completely full of mud. The axle was wobbling around really bad to the point where it was just, the whole rear end was just looser than a hooker on payday. So tore into it, figured out some stuff. Started here with the swing arm bearings. Those were, as mentioned, completely gone. So I ordered that kit. I went ahead and pulled everything apart, got the races out. Heat and beat, relief cuts, that's how I got it out. One thing to note though, the pin on this was really bad. Since the bearings have been gone for so long, it actually wore a flat spot into the pin. So I didn't want to put that back in. So I went ahead and got some other pins. They are used, but they're in good condition and they cost a quarter as much as buying new ones did. So everything's painted, ready to go. Rear axle tubes pretty much ready to go. I need to put another coat of paint on it. Again, I'm using bed lining, and that's that. So the challenge right now is actually the diff. So this thing has a weird, I'm going to call it a screw in here. It's about 40 millimeters and it takes a special tool to get it out. I'm going to go ahead and order that tool. I don't see any reasonable way to get this out other than that. So that's what I'm going to do. This is what it's doing right now. Obviously that's not good. So this has to be rebuilt. Nut comes off. These things are essentially sleeves that come off. There's another bearing in there. And I've got the kit I'll show you here in just a second. But from the inside, this is what it looks like. That is no bueno. You've got to drill out this pin, which I'll do. The pin, put it in there, and that'll help release some of the pressure on the bearing. So hopefully that one won't be too bad to get out. Also have to clean up the nose here where this thing has been wobbling around so long. This is aluminum. This is steel. So steel always fares better than aluminum. I'll pull it out, make sure it's all good. I do have to file a few little areas down where presumably some bearings or dirt or rocks or God knows what got in there. Nicked it up a little bit, but I'll do that. Get it all back together. Make sure the shims are right, get the clearances checked, and be good to go. I haven't really cleaned this up yet, so it looks like a disaster right now. The other thing to note, the speedometer in this was, the cap was on here, but there was no gear in there. So I got to find that somehow. Hopefully it won't cost me a fortune. This bike has set me back way more than I was expecting, but I'm still completely in the good on it right now. And then I'll obviously clean this up, blow that out and everything. The bearings actually come in a nice little kit, All Balls Racing. That's what I seem to use a lot of. This is the kit I'm using. So if you want to pause it and write that number down, that's what you order. Comes with all the bearings, seals, everything you need, except that damn tool. And then for the wheel bearings, again, All Balls, it's part number. This one comes with both sides. Some kits only have one or the other, and they're two different sizes. So make sure you get the one that does both wheels. I actually messed up and ordered two of these, so I gotta send one back. I also keep my chicken wings in there, because who don't love chicken wings? And who don't keep them right next to their bearings? Reasonable men keep their food next to their auto parts. Write that down. All right, so that's pretty much it. Oh, one last thing, the exhaust. This wound up being kind of cobbled together. but for the price that I'd have to pay for a factory exhaust, I decided 99 bucks, and I think $3 in parts was better. So essentially, what, $102 that I have in this. I went ahead and cut the bracket off the old muffler, just kind of wire brushed it down and shot it with some high temp paint. Got this coupler and these clamps. I wound up having to cut the coupler to, make it so it would actually smush down. But everything's tight on here, and then basically I'll just clamp that there, or potentially tack it on there if I can get my hands on a welder. You hear that, Mary? I don't have a welder yet. I need a welder. Anyways, so that's going to happen, and that'll be that. Next up, throw another coat of paint on that, put the bearings in it. Then I got to kind of wait for that tool. Once I get that, I can get the rear diff done, rebuilt, and pretty much get the back end together. A couple of trouble spots that I've had. Every bearing, since it was gone and this thing was kind of rusted and looked like it had just sat in a swamp, to be honest. I pulled everything out, got it all cleaned up, but the bearing races were really tough to get out. So I used a Dremel, make relief cuts. I use a slide hammer, and I use a torch. So heat the outside, not the bearing itself, heat the outside, whatever you're pulling it out of. Make some ledge cuts if you need to hook the slide hammer, and then just, again, heat and beat. One of my favorite things, though, has been the axle. I've got this stuck in a jack handle right now, so like penetrating oil, soaking a little bit more. So this has like a sleeve and then the bearing. I have beat on this thing for 2 days trying to get it off, to the point where I'm using an air chisel with a pickle fork on it, which is actually moving it, but not as delicate as I'd like to use. So I may wind up having to replace that sleeve, but it doesn't look like it's doing any real damage to the axle, so that's okay. But yeah, the axle is straight, little ugly, but in good shape. I'll clean it up, get this stuff off here, get the new bearings on, and yeah, live the dream.